Hi folks, thanks so much for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to cover the build out of a Martycube DIY subwoofer. My home theater actually has three JBL Studio 590 towers for the left, center, and right, and JBL Studio 580 towers for my surrounds, and Martin Logan MLT2 for my rear surrounds. In addition, my subwoofer is a Klipsch R112SW. What I've noticed is that the Klipsch feels very underpowered compared to the JBL towers, so I wanted to buy additional subwoofers. So when I researched a little bit, what I found was that you get better value by building your own subwoofer than just buying something off the shelf. So I did some research and narrowed down on Martycube as my design of choice. It's a very well-established design. So what I ended up doing was build two subwoofers using the Lavoce 18-inch SAF 184.03 drivers. And in this video, I'll walk you through the step-by-step process of how I went about doing that. I would really appreciate if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel. And feel free to post your comments down below and I'll try to answer to the best of my abilities. Thank you for watching.
So what I first want to do is compare the cost between the different options that I have while building my DIY subwoofer, right? The options that I evaluated were there are some commercially available flat packs. So if I buy the flat packs, actually I can get them and then the assembly would be fairly easy to do after that, right? So second option is basically where I could get the wood from Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the home improvement stores and then get them cut. But the problem there is that I don't have a table saw and I need very precision cuts. So basically I need to find someone that has a table saw that is willing to do that. And now within the second option, there are two variations, right? One is I could use it with either a mini DSP 2x4 HD, which basically is used between your amplifier and your receiver, or I could use it without that with some other alternative, right? So I've compared the three options. So option one, as you're seeing here, the flat pack would cost me about 457 for two subwoofers from a commercial website. And then the shipping on top of that would be another $300. The cost of the Lavoce drivers is the same across the board. It's about $500. Now, if I buy the flat pack, there's no need for cutting the wood or the cost of the wood, which is the MDF, right? And the amp is 429, a mini DSP 205, and then the supplies are like connectors, paint. I might have overestimated this a little bit, maybe $100 lesser. I don't know, but I'm just assuming conservatively it's $300. So if I go with option one, using a flat pack to construct my two subs, it's going to cost me about $2,231, right? So I am very interested in saving some money in this build. So what I want to do is the second option is I went and posted on my local township's Facebook group that I need some MDF cut to precisely, right? And if anybody is available, and there's a guy that volunteered to do that, and he was going to charge me about $80 to make all the cuts for the two subwoofers if I could get the wood. So the second option is where it would probably just cost me $180 to do that, right? Everything else is same to the first option, but if you're looking at it over here, right here, I'm saving about $600. Now, if I wanted to go even lower than that, is it mini DSP really needed, right? In my specific case, I think it may be redundant for my setup. So, but I'll have to experiment a little bit to see how I'm going to implement a high pass filter if I don't have a mini DSP. The only reason I would use a mini DSP in my setup would be for either the bass EQ to watch movies, like AVS Forum has a lot of message threads where they're talking about the bass EQ for different movies where you can really hear very low level bass. I already know I'm not going to be doing that because most of my content watching is 90% streaming, so mini DSP would not be useful for me from that perspective. Another reason people use it is also because of the amount of fine tuning that's possible, and also the fact that you can keep adding, like if I add another two subs and have four subs, right? I mean, it gives a lot of ability to configure things being very flexible. But I already know I'm not going to go more than two subs in my small theater room. So the mini DSP might be an overkill. If I don't do a mini DSP, I still think I need something that can provide some level of high pass filter for the protection down under, right? So there is an F mod that's available online. It is like a line level filter that you could, it's a hardware component from Parts Express, that you could basically use. That's about $30 with the connectors and everything. So I could use that. So if I did that, basically I'm going to be saving another $200, right? So it's either going to be 1500 or about 1700, right? So one of these options, right? So option one is out, and when I started the build, I was evaluating option two and option three. So I'll talk more about it as we go through the video. So I'm going to first model the driver using WinISD. So let me open up the WinISD Pro. So folks, there are a lot of good tutorials available on YouTube which walks through exactly how to model using WinISD, how to use WinISD and everything. So I'm not going to walk through those aspects today. I'm just going to focus on what I did for my driver modeling. So the driver that I'm going to be using for my subwoofer is the 18-inch Lavoce SAF 184.03, and I'm going to be building two subwoofers basically. So I'm going to be modeling it from that perspective. I've already created the driver here, so I'm going to go and open up the project. So I'm going to go here and open up the 18-inch Lavoce. So I'm looking at it here. I chose a number driver, and it shows it's a vented box. It's a box which is 4.75 cubic feet. That is the size of the Martycube subwoofer enclosure, and tuning frequency is 20 hertz. Just going to make it a square vent. I'm not going to enter anything in the EQ filter right now. So I'm going to come to the signal here, right? So signal, I'm going to use a 750 watts. Let's see, I use a 750 watts. And the reason for this is not arbitrary, right? So basically the Behringer's NX6000 amp that I have is rated to output about 3000 watts for an 8 ohm driver. Now everybody says that that's exaggerated, so I'm going to half it, so which is 1500. And I'm going to again half it by 750 to 750 watts, assuming that this is going to be reasonable power that that amp is going to deliver, right? So now at 750 watts, what I really want to see is how is the driver performing. So I'm going to go here and move it to SPL. So what it shows me here is at 750 watts, let me reduce this window a little bit. At 750 watts, it is reaching a peak of about 121 watts, right? So, sorry, 121 dB at 80 hertz. So this is way above reference. Reference is about 115 dB for a sub. Now let me look at the cone excursion. The cone excursion here tells me that at about 16 hertz, I'm going to exceed X max. Now X max is the maximum cone excursion for the driver, so it's usually better to keep the curves under that limit, right? So what it's telling me here is at 16 hertz, it's going to exceed that if I use the 750 watts power. Now, how much power do I really need, right? So that was the most important thing. Now, the way I interpret this is that if I go back to SPL here, it's showing me 121 dB peak reached at about 80 hertz, right? So now peak for or reference for a sub is 115 dB. Now, if I say that there are two subs that I'm going to be building, then there's going to be 6 dB gain as a rule of thumb. Now, if I back down from there, I'm probably targeting about 109 dB. So I want to keep tweaking this power until I get the max output at 109 dB. So let me go and reduce this to 500 watts. Reduce it to 500 watts, it's about 120 dB, still pretty high, right? So let me reduce this again to 250 watts. 250 watts is showing me 117. I'm still needing around 109. So let me do 100 watts. That's still 113, right? So let me do 50. Okay, so 50 watts, it's about 110, close enough, right? So we'll just take that. So now if I go down to cone excursion now, what I see is it says that it's under X max, right? So I'm able to play up to 110 dB with this one sub with a 50 watt input power and still be under the cone excursion. This is what it tells me. Now later what I'll cover to you is even if I increase this to 750 watts and let's say it's going going above X max here, there's a way to limit this by implementing a high pass filter. I'll go through that next, but just for my modeling purposes, what I understand based on this is that at 50 watts, I'm still able to reach my peak output, around reference 110 dB, and I would still have it under cone excursion without implementing any filters. So this is what this is. Now, as next steps, I'll walk through the actual construction of the subwoofer. So stay tuned.
I found this cut list for the Martycube from one of the AVS forum threads. Another person had created this, which shows you the list of cuts at the top and how they overlay on 2.5 sheets of MDF. In this next picture, I'm going to show you the zoomed of the first sheet, the second sheet with a little bit of overlap on the third sheet of MDF, and the third sheet. So as long as you can have all these cuts done, you should have enough material to cover about 2.5 MDF sheets, which would go for 2 Marty subs. So this is exactly what I did. I took this cut sheet and went to the guy who basically told me that he would help me cut these with his industrial table saw and got them cut. So I got the 3 sheets of MDF from Home Depot. As you're seeing here, I put them on my loading cart and I'm going to bring it out to my cart. They were extremely heavy because they are 3/4 inch MDF, so they're very, very heavy. Now, I had a very, very tight fit in my minivan. It was really a pain loading it in. So what I would recommend is if you could probably rent a truck or have a friend who has a truck, it might be easier getting these home. But I had to manage with my minivan. So I've just recorded the circle cuts for the baffles over here, right? So this is basically the person who helped me. Basically, he's making the cuts as you're seeing for the baffle cuts for both the inner baffle and the outer baffle. So they came out really precise. So this shows you all the wood cuts after they are made. I just assembled them all together. As you're looking at it, it's a very, very neat cut, very precise. Definitely helps having someone that has an industrial table saw do this cut for you if you don't own your own table saw. So this shows you the close-up of the baffle cuts. And here I'm testing the speaker mounting inside the inner and outer baffle, and it fits perfectly. Now I'm going to be doing a dry fit, right? So as you're seeing here, what I'm doing is I have about 8 or 9 clamps that I purchased, 9 clamps that I purchased from Harbor Freight. So I'm using them to basically do a dry fit assembly to see how everything fits together. As you're seeing here, it's all coming together really nicely. All the edges are cleanly aligned, and this would be the completed picture after applying the glue. So the next sequence of steps is going to show you the assembly. I'm using clamps and glues to bring them all together. I bought a couple of about 9 36 inch or 3 feet clamps from Harbor Freight. And I'm using the tile bond glue. Basically, I'm creating a glue interface between the two surfaces being joined and clamping them together and leaving them there for some time. I'm not using a brad nailer. I could do it if I need to, but I don't have one. So I'm just using clamp and glues for this purpose. Now I'm going to be lining the walls by using a spray adhesive and then mattress topper. There was a study done by Database actually, which recommended using some kind of lining inside a vented sub. There are still a bunch of discussions going online, but just thought I'll be safe and apply this. It doesn't hurt anything. You're seeing one layer being applied here, but I did pat it with 3 to 4 layers. Each layer is about 1.25 inch thick. I did 3 layers because they recommend about 3 to 4 inches thick. I'm next proceeding on to sanding before the painting. And one of the key things that I'm doing here based on other videos that I've seen online is that they're recommending applying a mixture of 50-50 glue to water to all the joints, right? That's what you're seeing here me doing. I first apply one layer, wait for some time until it dries, sand it down, and then apply a second layer and then sand it down again. The reason why they're asking to do this is so that when this is applied and when it's sanded, right, the wood is actually going to be deposited into all the gaps between the joints so that it gives a very smooth surface and it doesn't show the two joints being connected when you're painting, right? So that's the reason I'm doing it. I'm now proceeding into painting, and what I'm using is something called Exo Hide that I purchased from Parts Express. It is nothing but a black textured paint that looks really good on speaker boxes. And along with the paint, I also purchased the rollers that they recommended at Parts Express. And I think the reason they recommended these rollers are because it can ensure that you're not getting any lines while you're painting this. So that's what I'm doing. I'm first applying one layer horizontally and then vertically. And then I'm going to be doing 2 layers altogether. So that'll complete the painting of the whole enclosure. So next step I'm going to be doing is putting in a hole for attaching the connector to the back of my subwoofer box. Now for the actual connections, right, so what I'm doing is I have a 14 gauge speaker wire here that I'm stripping at the ends, the red and the black, about a 1/4 inch that I'm stripping first. And then what I'm going to be doing is the connector hole that I showed you before. The connector here is what will go into the hole. What I need to do is attach these into the 1 plus and the 1 minus here. So the red goes into the 1 plus and the black goes into the 1 minus. So what I'm doing is I have a connector here that I'm trying to just dry fit first and then take it out, and then I'm going to insert the wire into that, crimp it, and then attach it into that connector. And then what I'll be doing is putting that connector into the back of the subwoofer and screwing it. So that way I have a wire extending from the back of the subwoofer to the front, and the front part I will be attaching to the actual driver for the subwoofer. as you're seeing here, the wire has been connected here, and the other end of the wire is on the inside of the subwoofer to be connected to the driver. So I'm putting the connector in here into the hole that we had made while I showed you the assembly, and then I'm using some drywall screws to basically put that in, right? So, but before you do the screwing of the drywall screws inside, it's always helpful, because it's MDF, to pre-drill the hole. So I'm pre-drilling the hole and then putting in the drywall screws so that the connector is anchored to the back of the subwoofer. And the drywall screws are used where coarse threaded drywall screws. So this is the speak-on connector I'm going to be using to connect between the subwoofer and the amplifier. As you're seeing here, it comes out in 3 parts, and it's got a claw-like part, right? So this claw, I'm first going to insert the speaker wire through this claw-like part and then put the blue on top of that. And then I'll be stripping the speaker wire and attaching it to the black part. So as you're seeing here, this wire has been stripped. It's being inserted into the blue. And then I'm taking the black, and the black has a 1 plus and a 1 minus. So I'm going to be removing the screw from the 1 plus, inserting my red wire there, and then tightening it. And I'm going to be doing the same for the black. I'm going to be taking out the 1 minus screw, putting the wire in and tightening it up. So then after that, I'm going to assemble the whole thing, and that will become my speak-on connector on one end, which goes into the subwoofer back. The previous step that you saw where the hole was filled in by the connector, it's going to go and fit in there. The other end of the speak-on connector is going to be at the amplifier end. So now what I'm going to be doing is mounting this subwoofer inside the baffle. I have 2 pieces of string that I'm using to hold it and position it. Now I positioned it, and now I'm pre-drilling the holes into those 8 holes. Now I'm going to be taking it out, and then I'm actually going to be fully pre-drilling it. The previous one was just a marker. Once I finish this step, the next step would be to connect the wires which we inserted earlier to the back of the driver. As you're seeing, that's what I'm doing right now, and then place the driver into the hole and use my same drywall screws to fully screw it in. So that completes it. So I'm going to be just turning it over, making the connection at the back, connecting the other end to the amp, and then playing some tunes to test it out. Alright folks, so I hope this video was useful as I walked through each step that I investigated in building out my subwoofers. So if this was helpful to you, I hope it can help you in building out your own subwoofers or additional research that you need to do to narrow down on what you want to do. If you found this video useful, I would really appreciate if you could like this and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.